This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rapin. Joining me this week, a pair of crystalline snowflakes that are certainly not made from evaporated dog pee, Brian Murray.
Hello.
And Kate Scotchless.
Hello?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the subtle insult. I couldn't think of anything, and I didn't want to reuse last week's intro. But welcome to episode 359 of I Read Comic Books. I'm so glad that you're both here to talk with me about comic books. Before we get into things, I want to say the 2023 Goodreads Reading Challenge has started. It's live on our Goodreads. There's a link in the show notes if you haven't heard it already. We're asking people to read 24 books this year. We've got almost 20 fantastic picks from folks on the IRCB group, Aaron, our Goodreads mod, and a bunch of people from our Patreon. If you're a patron, you could join, I'm going to say this month. And if you want to put something on the list, you can, but you got to join us this month in February. So just calling that out. I do want to say also at the end of this month, we have the latest IRCB movie club that's dropping with our good friend Kev from the Austin Danger Pod is going to be joining us for that episode. And Brian, Paul, and I are going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The folks voted, and it was a neck and neck with Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And just in the last minute, someone ticked it over to Spider-Man. So, if we go back to animated movies again in the future, maybe we'll watch Batman. The other movie that was on that list was Akira. I was ready to watch Akira again because I'm almost done reading the series and I was going to just drop some massive knowledge on folks. But you know what? Next time. Instead, we've all been reading Spider-Man and I'm excited to talk about that. But let's get into things. Let's talk about the two legally mandated questions that I have. And that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? How are you doing, Kate?
I've been okay. My kitty, as you guys know, was recently had a extended stay in the kitty hospital, which has been pretty scary and unpleasant. But she rallied Friday night overnight, and instead of being there all weekend like we expected, she came home Saturday morning, which has been amazing to have her back home. But she's like better enough to not be hospitalized, but still very sick. So fingers crossed, send all the good vibes, all the eat cat food vibes, because she's really nauseous. So getting her to eat right now is proving really challenging. And but otherwise good. Because of having a sick kitty that needs lots of cuddles and love and encouragement, she eats more if I sit there with her, which is adorable, but also like, come on, cat. I have read a lot of comics. I got a stack of books out, and then the Hoopla comics, like the what do we call them? The bonus borrows for February are pretty solid. There's not a lot like the audiobooks. I was like very meh. I didn't see anything I wanted on the bonus borrows. But there were a good number on the comics one. So check that out, folks, if you have Hoopla from your library. But the comic that I read this week that I liked the most so far is Feelings, A Story in Seasons by Manheet Thap. It reads and feels like a second OGN, if that means anything to you guys. Like
absolutely.
The print quality and the art quality, the hand feel of everything is very nice. Like, I was very surprised when I actually realized that this is actually Ransom House. But it's very text light, art forward, where the creator is very much definitely an artist, and her other work is just being an illustrator in some other books. I would say through the whole book, there's probably like 2 paragraphs of text for this whole OGN.
Interesting.
So it's mostly art with scattered text. And it's not really a story per se, like there's not a plot really, but just the emotional rhythms of her year and how the change in seasons affects her with her like anxiety and depression. And she seems to have a like really consistent seasonal pattern. I would assume that she's describing seasonal affective disorder, but I'm not positive. You don't know when someone's like clinical
hashtag
versus
not a doctor.
Yeah, hashtag not a doctor, hashtag everything in psych is like there's a level of normal that's like the same symptoms, just milder. So who knows? One of the interesting things is, so she's British, but ethnically East Asian, and a lot of East Asian cultures have more seasons. So there's 6 seasons in this book that it's broken up into. Each season's like a chapter, basically. And so there's high summer, late summer, monsoon season, and then, autumn, winter, and spring. But depending on the culture, it turns out there are also other seasons. Like some of them break up winter into 2 seasons and stuff like that.
I don't know why we don't break up winter into 2 seasons. I feel like if you're north of a certain part of the United States, like there should be like the just kidding, it's not going to snow, and then the fuck you, it's cold. So like
Yeah.
I really, I understand that feeling.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense, especially with monsoon season being a very different season than either summer
Totally.
Yeah.
or fall. And the late summer seems to be when it gets like unbearably hot versus high summer being when it's like, oh yay, summer, fun, outdoors, versus the like, I'm dying, I'm melting, make this stop. um so I really liked it. It's really beautiful. If you are someone who is into like books for the art of the book, highly recommend. And I definitely like am gonna check out her Instagram and stuff. She's on a couple different social media platforms because the strength of this book was definitely in the artwork.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I'm just kind of skimming through the preview on Amazon, and yeah, it looks like a really just overall beautiful book. Like
Yeah,
I feel like I'm gonna have to check this out for my library too.
highly recommend.
Well, Brian, what about you? How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been good. West Michigan weather watch. This bitch cold.
Indeed.
Thank you.
We were in single digits for most of Friday.
Right.
Finally cracked freezing last night. Those are our seasons in Michigan. We have cold and construction.
And then mud season before spring.
Right.
Comics wise, I had read the first issue of Gwenverse a while back, but I found the trade was on Hoopla now. So I decided to pick that up and give it another shot. This is written by Tim Seeley with lines by Jody Nishijima and colors by Federico Blee, Juan Fernandez, and Protobunker's Fer Cifuentes Sujo. Letters by Ariana Mayer or Mar. It did not like change my opinion on the book between reading one issue and reading 5 or whatever it was.
Sure.
The basic premise is a far future pop idol wants to send her like persona, her like template for her being back in time so that she will be all of the heroes and all of the like famous people.
Okay.
But because one of her flunkies failed to get a part she needed, she decides to just go with it anyways, even though it's kind of half-assed.
Okay.
And so it winds up colliding, like crossing the streams, essentially, with Gwen Stacy's interdimensional travel. And Gwen winds up being the template that is thrown back through time. And so we have Gwen trying to go back and find the different versions of herself. So there's Thor Gwen, Wolverine Gwen, Captain America Gwen. And she has to find them and stop them from changing the timeline so that it doesn't wind up a, dystopian hellscape.
Right.
Like it does.
Is this, Brian, tell me this is not the case. Is this the origin of Gwenpool?
No.
Okay. It felt too good to be true. I feel like Gwenpool came from a different but slightly related situation, right?
I know nothing about Gwenpool.
Okay.
I've been actively avoiding Gwenpool, which I know is not fair of me.
Sure,
but
sure. I will just say, I know this is not about Spider-Gwen, but the little bits of Gwenpool that I have read have actually been entertaining. Like, I am also hesitantly not into it because it feels too like, haha, this is like how meta we can be. It's worse than Deadpool somehow. But it actually works. Like, she was in, and the only exposure that I've had was when Kelly Thompson wrote her for West Coast Avengers, which again, you kind of got to go into that book with like a pound of salt because like it's a weird book, right? Like Quentin Quire and Kate Bishop and Gwenpool and just
you lost me at Quentin Quire.
I know. See, it's a smattering of weird characters that don't really belong together, and for some reason that book worked for me. I don't know. Maybe I was just in the right mood to read it, but I don't know. I'm hesitantly okay with Gwenpool, but by no means have I like, let's buy the next Gwenpool volume,
Yeah, for me it was just like I was already like really hesitant about the name Spider-Gwen. Like
yeah.
Like I liked when they started just calling her Ghost Spider on the title of her own book.
Yeah.
But then Gwenpool sounded like it was just a ripoff of that.
Yeah.
And it's not connected at all from what I understand.
Gotcha.
Like she's not Gwen Stacy.
Right.
But I don't know. The whole thing threw me off.
Yeah. Vincent in the chat is saying that cosplayers made Gwenpool famous as originally Gwenpool was an alternate cover or something, or to something. So, you know.
And Danny is telling me that Ghost Spider is a dumb name, so Danny is now off the podcast.
Right, we have officially banned Danny. Brian did pull that trigger.
No, I mean, art-wise, this book is definitely not my favorite. I think that it's an art style that tries to walk a line between being very like manga inspired, but it feels like they didn't want to commit too much to a manga style, like they were afraid of scaring off the Western audience or something.
Sure.
So what it comes across as is something that is kind of like trying to be manga-ish while also trying to maintain that very standard, like, this is what superhero comics look like genre of Western comics art. And I don't think it really delivers on either. So that was kind of disappointing. It gave me very much, if you've seen like the How to Draw Manga books.
Sure, yeah.
And that sounds meaner than I mean it to be, but that's the best visual comparison that I can think of.
Gotcha.
Definitely not a slam on Nishijima as an artist at all.
Right. But it is kind of tough, right? Because you can't go like full manga. Like on a Western book like this, because I feel like you will alienate, like you said, an audience that probably isn't used to reading books that have that kind of just overall feel. Plus, unfortunately, there are still people out there who are, this is manga, I'm not gonna read it, and I don't understand where that comes from. I was one of those people. I should say I should know where that comes from. But then like you have to just accept that you're wrong and try something.
Yeah, it comes from being a shitty teenage boy.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah, that's actually that's probably it. But yeah, I feel that I just skimmed through some of the preview on that one too, and I see what you mean. There's like a very much a strong blend between like Western Eastern like art style.
Yeah,
I guess.
I just wish they had committed more to it, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha.
What about you, Mike?
Well, I have been good. Prepping for the IRCB movie club, so I've been reading a bunch of Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Spider-Gwen comics, which has been really cool. And I went out to Michael's yesterday, which is a cool thing to do, and I bought a bunch of frames for all this art that I've been sitting on. I've got some 12 by 12 posters from the 70 millimeter podcast that I've been sitting on for a long time, as well as some original art from people that I created. I got something in the mail very recently from an artist, Will McPhail, who did the book In that Kate recommended as part of the Best of 2022. It's on Patreon. Sorry for another Patreon plug, but probably one of my favorite books that I've read in a very long time. Like I got the hardcover. I also bought a piece of original art from him. Not a piece of, I think it was like a limited run or something, but it's penciled. It's I don't know. It looks like it's pencil on paper, so I don't know. But it was very affordable, and I got a frame for it, and I just need to hang it up in my office. So hopefully, for those of you who are seeing my video, which is just Brian and Kate right now, and Nick, you will eventually see art up on this wall to my left. And when we do another live episode, folks live will also see that art. It's going to be really cool. But otherwise, I did read some other comics that weren't just Spider-Man stuff. I was very hyped for this last week, and I read Where Monsters Lie #1. This is by Kyle Starks, Peter Kowalski with colors by Vladimir Popov. And I don't know how to describe this book because I love Kyle Starks. I love the way he tells stories. I just read Rock Candy Mountain. I did read the first 2 volumes of that last week, as I talked about as I was on the top of my pile. Really loved it, and so I was super excited to jump into Where Monsters Lie, and I was expecting a lot of funny, and this book is more dark than it is funny, but I think that's also kind of the joke. If you don't know, the story of this series is there's an imaginary closed off secret neighborhood where movie style murderers like Hannibal Lecter, Pennywise, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy, like all of the big like villains from these movies, they all live in this neighborhood. And the reason why is so that they can coordinate their murders and say like, hey, we're going to have a cleanup team come out to this house after you murder, 6 teenagers or something like that, which is kind of wild. It's a ridiculous concept.
They were roommates.
Yeah. And so they all live in this little like cul-de-sac of houses. And this isn't a spoiler, but the first couple of pages, some kids are getting murdered by this guy, and a couple of them escape, right? So there's a big now this secret group has now been potentially exposed, and so we get to meet all of the players and all the people who live in the neighborhood and see their interactions with each other, see who runs the group, and it's a pretty fun issue. Like, it's super weird and it's funny, but not laugh out loud funny. And like, don't get me wrong, like, this book is good and the bit is like 100% there, but it really rides the line between like dark and dark funny. And you kind of are, as you read it, you're like, is this supposed to be a joke or is this just really dark? It almost feels like Starks is playing with this idea of like, you can push something so far that it becomes funny because of how insane and ridiculous it is. And of course, the core conceit of this book being like a bunch of, horror movie monster people live in this closed neighborhood and they have to deal with like an HOA, and they all have agreed on this weird contract so that they can secretly get away with all of their, killings. It's kind of goofy, but it's mostly just dark with like dabs of funny every so often. I will say, Danny in the chat is saying that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy is Leatherface. Okay, sorry about that. He doesn't need a name. He's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy. It doesn't matter. Anyways, it's a wild concept. I think Peter Kowalski's art is really good, but it doesn't have that blend of comedy that I think you expect from a Kyle Stark's book, right? Like, if you look at Rock Candy Mountain, or you look at Old Head, which are both drawn by Kyle Starks, or if you look at Chris Schweitzer's art on Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, these all have like a very cartoony, goofy style. Outer Limits is another one, or Outer Darkness is another one. They have this almost cartoony style that adds a little bit of playfulness to the jokes. And unfortunately, Kowalski's art doesn't have that, which adds almost more to this. Is this too dark, or is this dark and funny at the same time? But ultimately, I think this story pays off. Like, the first issue it ends very funny in a way that I didn't expect it to. And, maybe I'm trying to judge Kyle Starks a bit too much by his previous like funny book work. But belly laugh or not, I feel like this book is fun if you're into the idea of a bunch of, serial killers living together and having to deal with each other, the commonalities of being in a closed off neighborhood. It's a fun little concept. I think it's going to be a good book, and I honestly just want more Kowalski art, and I'm interested to see how dark and weird this creative team takes this book. Like, are they just going to show all the crazy murder stuff, or is it just going to be the ridiculous antics with hints at what these people are potentially capable of? Because there is a literal mass of weirdos that live in this place, and you have to just, if you open just to the first page and you see like the preview of everybody, it's, of course there's a murder clown, of course there's a Hannibal Lecter character, of course there's a guy who just has a skull mask and that's his thing, of course there's a guy named Mega Fucker who has a bear that rides on the back of his head. Like, why not? Because this book is absurd. So, if you are if you're looking for something that's kind of dark and weird, Where Monsters Lie #1 is pretty solid. The other book that I did read is Stillwater Volume 2. This is written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Roman K. Perez, colors by Mike Spicer. And, it's been a while since I read the first volume of this series. And I remember the gist of it, like the synopsis from #1 is nobody dies in the town of Stillwater. That's just not a promise. It's a threat, which is an interesting idea. All the people that live within the border of this town simply do not age. Time ultimately stops for them in terms of the aging process, which is problematic when there are children that live in this city. And the first volume kind of explores that. The second volume, it definitely explores that further, and I don't want to spoil anything because I feel like the first volume had a good like twist at the end. The second volume also has that, but it felt unfortunately like this volume was trying to just slash through story beats as fast as possible, without just skipping them. Kate, did you read this book?
No, I just know what you mean with that. I similarly read some stuff that felt like that, where they're just like, I outlined the story and then I decided, why flesh it out when you can just have the outline beats? Like,
yeah, it's kind of strange, right? Because I feel like that's me like doing a terrible like a really rough criticism of this story, but it felt like maybe this is one of those rare cases where a collected edition of a book actually reads better month to month. Because I think if I was getting these fast-paced issues month to month, I don't think I would be as upset.
oh, yeah, that
However,
makes sense.
this story yeah, this story is weird because like I feel like Zdarsky and Perez want to get to something, and it's the end of this arc. And I feel like they could have gotten to the end of this arc without even doing this arc, if that makes any sense. Because unfortunately, there is in the middle of the story, there are two evils, and they decide to take the lesser of two evils. And in this, within like an issue, that second evil rears its head, and you go, "Uh-oh, turns out they were evil." And this is me trying to be as vague as possible to not spoil it. I mean, as soon as you get into the book, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But it really kind of bums me out how fast this book moves, because you didn't have any time to really sit with anything. And that could be me just reading through this book too quickly, or it could be that an issue just literally was breakneck speed trying to get to the end. Or each issue was so. I don't know. I don't want to say that it's bad, because I feel like I was satisfied by the end of the arc. It just kind of felt like there was a lot of fluff to get to the end of 6 issues. When if the point that they were trying to make with the twist of the end of the arc could have been done at honestly any moment. So I don't know. The stakes were weird. Maybe it'll pay off in the next arc. But again, I'm not against this book. I feel like the twist was worth the buildup. The only thing that I really have to say is it just felt like I didn't understand the point of this arc, which is a really weird thing to say.
I almost wonder if it would have worked better in single issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
if the pacing would have felt more natural.
I know, and it's like, should I have waited like a week between reading each chapter in the volume? That would have been interesting to just read this piecemeal. But the last thing I'll say is Perez's artwork in this volume felt like there were pages where things were more rushed. And I don't like, there was one page in particular that I noticed this, where it was just like a very important page, and there was so little detail that I was just kind of lost as to who was who, because there are like multiple goatee wearing men in this book, and when you can't tell the older guy versus the more older guy, it's like you're kind of lost between who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's the less bad guy, who's the good guy. I don't know, just a little annoying thing. Who knows? If anybody has read this book and completely disagrees, send me an email, ircbpodcast@gmail.com. I will definitely not read it. So
every episode is Mike trying to pick a fight with somebody.
I dare you. I just dare you. I don't know. Stillwater's interesting because the twist at the end of this arc felt like an old Invincible or Walking Dead arc twist, which is a weird thing to say because we have Saga now. But Walking Dead and I feel like Invincible, and again, this is just a Kirkman thing. I don't know. He does these twists that you're kind of just like, I hated reading 143 pages of this volume, and I got to page 144, and now I can't wait for the next volume, because that's almost the style of twist that was. Now, I didn't hate this volume. I actually really liked some of the development. And the things that Chip Zdarsky asked were way darker than I thought this series was ever going to go. I was lukewarm until the very, very end. So I don't know. Can you put like a 2-star but with an asterisk that says the last page was a 5-star? I don't know. I summed that out to be, or I mathed that out to be about 3 stars. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling with thoughts that are clearly incomplete, and let's talk about comics that are on the top of our pile, comics that are new or old, or comics that we are just plain excited to read next. Let's jump right into things with you, Brian.
Sure. Before I get into it, just want to offer a quick trigger warning. There's going to be some brief discussion of mass shootings.
So if you want to skip ahead, there are chapter markers in our show notes, as well as if in your favorite podcast app, you can just skip ahead if you want.
So the top of my pile is Numb to This, Memoir of a Mass Shooting. This is written and drawn by Kendra Neely, with letters by DC Hopkins and color assist from Juan Murillo. This is definitely, it's weird to pick a book like this because I'm not excited to read this book. Like, I'm not eager to read someone's first person accounting of surviving a mass shooting. But I do think that it's a really important perspective to get. I think that it's important for these people to get their voices heard. And I am definitely interested to see what Neely has to say. Neely's a survivor of the, sorry if I mispronounce this, the Umpqua Community College mass shooting in 2015. And if you don't remember which one that is, that's because there's so many of them.
Unfortunately,
and it's super dark. Like, it's This kind of reminds me of when we read Kent State. Was the Kent State one?
Mm-hmm.
We're like, this is probably not going to be a fun read,
right?
But I think it's fascinating. Like, this is a way to get into the mind of someone who's been through something like that and understand, what that felt like and how that changed the way they view the world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely not like a fun, relaxing read. I'm definitely gonna have to read that like in the sunlight with a palate cleanser on hand.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to what I will learn from this book much more than I am to the actual process of reading it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally follow that. It's really tough to look at books like this and be like, I'm excited to, dig into this, like you said, because it's, on the one hand, it's like we never want to experience these types of things, right? But at the same time, it is crucial for us to experience the empathy for those who have, because this is a part of life in America, unfortunately. So like the best we can do is try to understand our fellow person, right? And read and understand, or hear their stories and read their stories. So, yeah, I'm putting this on my to read list. I didn't know that this was a book, so thanks for bringing it to my attention, Brian.
Yeah, I got this as part of a Secret Santa exchange. I kind of forgot that it was on my list for that exchange.
Gotcha.
I requested just like funny snacks and stuff like that. So I got, like cheesecake flavored gummy candy and like a chocolate bar with popcorn in it, and one that was flavored with potato chips and bacon. And then I found at the bottom of the box this memoir of a mass shooting. So it was a total shift, to say the least.
Someone was saying to you, like, read this and then here is what you can eat to comfort yourself afterwards. Yeah.
Maybe that was their intent. Because what I did was eat all the snacks within the first like 48 hours. And this book has just been sitting on my desk, daring me to pick it up since then.
Oh man. Well, let us know what you think. I'm gonna try to check this out too if I can. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up. Kate, what about you? What's on the top of your pile?
Well, Brian's pick has been on my list since I listened to the author talk about it on NPR. But
nice.
I honestly wanted something more cheerful, so I picked up from the library COVID Chronicles, a comics anthology.
Oh my God, you guys. Holy shit.
So this came out in 2021 and it was the Washington Post's best graphic novel of the year. And it's edited by Kendra Beaulieu and Rich Johnson, and it has like 60 plus comic shorts, all about 2020 and what was going on for people during that time. And there are people, writers and artists in here I've never heard of, and there's Eisner winners, and there's everybody in between kind of thing. So I think, like any anthology, I expect it to be a pretty big mix, but all of the stories are, pretty short. So that works out well. Unlike when I get really frustrated when, like normal, like Marvel comics will have like a whole issue that's a different artist that I don't like or something. And you're like, I don't want 30 pages of this, but in this case, this will work out. So it's a nice hand feel graphic novel, glossy paper. So I'm excited to read it, but I definitely am gonna like piecemeal it out and not just read it like cover to cover.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, like, not to say that like something like this was inevitable, but like, this is one of those things. It's probably for the better for people to find ways to express like the mass, their feelings of like the overall mass trauma of what was the 2020 to 2022. I mean, I feel like despite everything, folks are maybe understanding and dealing with it better now. But like, yeah, it was pretty dark there for a while.
I mean, it's still very dark, Mike. Lots of people are still dying every day. But
I know.
This book specifically came out in 21, so I do think all of these were actually written and drawn in 2020, like 2020 pre-vaccine, when it was like the very worst kind of thing.
Okay.
Everything was shut down.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a different phase of the pandemic than we're in now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know how to follow any of that. but I'm going to try to talk about
now for something completely different.
Yeah, let me talk about what's so we have some folks hanging out with us on Discord as always. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. They sent over their picks for this week. Jeff is reading Alienation by Ines Estrada from Fantagraphics as part of the our Goodreads Book of the Month theme, which is a writer or artist who's a person of color. Paul G is reading Ben Passmore's Your Black Friend and Other Strangers, also part of the Goodreads challenge. Hannah's reading Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons. Danny's reading Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants #1, which is going to be my pick, but I wanted to pick something that wasn't an X-Men book this week. Kev is reading Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham from the 1985 to 1987 run, which is very exciting because I'm also going to be reading this very soon as part of our prep for the Patreon app. But I'm glad that Kev is diving in. We were exchanging emails and Kev sent over a couple of links and I said, finally, we're going to have a Spider-Ham expert. So I'm expecting Kev to bring all of the trivia to our episode. Nick is reading
There will be a test.
Yeah. Nick's going to be reading All Against All #3, and Vincent is reading Arrow Before the Storm Volume 1 by Julie Fenn and Greg Pak, art by Kang. So for me this week, I am going to be reading Love Everlasting Volume 1. This is by Tom King, written by Tom King, art by Elsa Chartier, colors by Matt Hollingsworth, letters by Clayton Coles, designed by Emma Price, and editor Maria Isaac. It's time, is what I said in my notes. But I do want to call out one thing really quick. Image Comics, can you fix the fucking credits on your website? Like, please, the thing that bothers me the most about pretty much every publisher's website, with rare exception, like Fantagraphics is good about this, but they're typically publishing like 1 or 2 creator books in general. Mm-hmm. But a lot of publishers just don't put the right credits on their site. They don't put some credits at all. Like colorists are rarely credited, letterers are rarely credited on websites. DC does it okay. Marvel does it sometimes just when they feel like it. They're just like, just cause we're going to have this random Moon Knight book that like probably less people are reading than this Spider-Man book. We're only going to put like the writer and the first letter of the artist's name for some reason. It's very frustrating.
Keep you guessing.
Yeah. The thing that kills me is that you can look at a cover of these books and it'll have 4 names across the top, right? This one in particular had King, Chartier, Hollingsworth, Coles. Right. But of course, on Image's website, who's credited? Tom King and Elsa Chartier. That's it. But sometimes they put the colorist, but sometimes they put the letterer. I don't understand who's working on this, but I'm just screaming and yelling about this. I know that this is all manually done work, right? Like someone has to be there punching in the letters and numbers. I get it. But if you care about things, why aren't you investing time in this stuff? I don't understand it. So anyways, if you don't know what this series is, I believe it was originally published on Tom King's Substack. So if you're a subscriber there, you've probably already seen this book. You've maybe already read it. But the synopsis is, Joan Peterson discovers that she is trapped in an endless, terrifying cycle of, quote, romance, a problem solved, a man to marry, and every time she falls in love, she's torn from her world and thrust into another teary saga. It's Elsa, it's Tom, it's Matt, it's Clayton. These are names that you know. Elsa's a friend of the show. We've got Mr. Miracle Man / Mr. Vision. We've got the vibrancy of the wicked and divine. We've got a letterer who's about as prolific as Hassan Otsmani Elhau. Like, this is a murderer's row of creators. So, like, that right there should sell you on this book. But in case you weren't sold, this is a romance comic with a twist. Yes, absolutely. It's a perfectly crafted. What did I put in my notes here? It's a perfectly crafted mystery, like an everlasting episode of The Twilight Zone, says Francesco Francavilla. I thought that was interesting. But I think that there's something interesting to be said about like Substack comics getting printed. Things like Panel Syndicate, things like Webtoons getting printed. I kind of want to like ball that up and put that for another episode. So I won't really talk about that. But I think I read 2 issues of this because we fortunately got a comp. Thank you, Image Comics. We appreciate you. And it's really fun. It's really cheesy romance stuff. Each issue feels like something that you would imagine could only have been published in like the 50s, where it's like, oh no, I'm in love with this boy, what am I to do? And then they fall in love, and then of course there's like this weird time travel thing that's happening, like the whole world is exploding.
We've all been there.
Yeah, classic romance stuff. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Elsa's work is very, very much giving me like a lot of Darwin Cook vibes, specifically in this volume, more so than in other times that I've read. So if you're into that, I think you'll dig this. But Elsa's art by itself is fantastic. I think Matt Hollingsworth has done a great job of coloring things to look very much of the times that the stories are supposed to be taking place in. We've got a story in the 50s. We've got a story in the 70s. I think the stories keep going on and on to different eras. But yeah, it's a really fun, cheesy book. Like Tom King and Elsa Chartier, like they take no qualms with like leaning into these very simple, basic stories of just like, woman loves man. Oh no, woman can't be with man. Suddenly now she can be with man. And whether that just stays very heteronormative, I'm not sure. But it's very funny in like how hard they lean into these like very cheesy one-off story vibes that have a slight thread that connect them between each other. So if you want to read more Tom King that isn't just a Batman book, I promise you he's capable of writing things that are not Batman and also they're not from DC and also very good. This is pretty fun. Like I said, 2 issues in, I'm really liking it. It's pretty easy to read. It's a little wordy at times, but ultimately it's very fun. So highly recommend it. Love Everlasting Volume 1 from what I've seen so far. I'm going to finish it. That's why it's on the top of my pile, I guess. Yeah, so I guess let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about Legos. I guess Lego. I guess, yeah. That's, yeah.
Welcome to my money pit. Join me.
We will be right back in just a second. Hey folks, I want to tell you about a new comic podcast I've been turned on to called The Comics That We Love. It's a show hosted by Zach McCrary, a lifelong comics fan who has always felt that comics were more than just capes and cowls. He believes that comics can touch every emotion and it can help us understand the world around us. Each week, Zach and a guest sit down to discuss a story that cemented their love of sequential art, learn about the people who created it, and then break down what it is that made that story great. Whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, manga, or superheroes, you'll leave every episode with a much deeper understanding of the book that they discussed. Sometimes he's joined by creators to talk about what it's like to bring their characters to life. Recent episodes include The Incredible Hulk, Future Imperfect, Captain America, Winter Soldier, Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, Chainsaw Man, and Akira. I'll say, listening to a few episodes of this show has astounded me with the depth at which Zach dives into these comics, and it's been a real treat to listen to. The Comics We Love is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else you can download and stream podcasts. You can also follow the show on Instagram and TikTok at The Comics That We Love for more. For our show this week, we are talking about Lego. I guess more specifically comic book Lego, but Kate brought something to my attention recently, and I feel already financially devastated by it, and it doesn't even exist yet, and it may not exist, and yet my wallet somehow feels lighter. So Kate, could you tell us a little bit about your personal passion when it comes to Lego and why you've brought these things to our attention today?
Well, I'm glad to be here on the I Play Legos podcast to tell you about my crippling addiction. I have gotten really into the adult, like creator Lego sets and ideas sets that are like specifically designed for adults. So they have like thousands and thousands of pieces and motors and cool things.
So adult Legos, but not like adult Legos.
Right. Right. But they do say, and this is endlessly funny to me, 18 plus on the front, which is hilarious.
You got to be able to vote to build
those Legos.
Which is extra funny when it's like a Harry Potter set.
Yeah. Oof. Oh no. Not gonna go there. Keep going, Kate.
So anyway, as I've fallen farther and farther down this rabbit hole that is Lego, I have stumbled across on Reddit the Lego Leak subreddit. That is Lego Leak, not leaks with an S. That subreddit is dead. What you want is Lego Leak. Okay. And so these are comics related or adjacent sets that are rumored for 2024. Apparently Lego, as they're coming out with sets, will do surveys with volunteers where they show them or describe a set of like how many pieces it is, what it is of, what minifigures it comes with, and then ask them basically what they'd pay for it. Which is hilarious to me because Legos are crazy expensive. So it's got to be like, okay, we just take that and double it. But there are some super cool ones that then someone who did that survey basically released what they were asked about. Ooh. And the one I was most jazzed about that Mike and I have been talking about is this X-Mansion. In the survey, it had a little over 3,000 pieces. and is a 2-story building, including the front gate. And it's like a big set, like 10 inches by 21 inches by 6 inches, like a hefty build. And so it's not confirmed officially yet, and it's just part of that survey. And sometimes a lot of those come to pass, like more than half, when things like this have come out before. But there are definitely things that were in surveys like this in the past that never showed up.
Sure.
But oh my gosh, do I want this to happen? Because so far I have not gotten any comics Legos. They recently have all been based on recent Marvel movies for pretty obvious reasons. So like the recent Thor movie and Black Panther. And they're fun, but like for any licensed set like Star Wars or Marvel or Harry Potter, there's like a somewhat bit of an upcharge for licensed properties, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you can pretty usually get more for less if you are going for some of these other sets. And so that's what I've been doing instead. And yeah, so this would be, if this comes to pass, this would be my first like actual Marvel set that I'd be throwing money at. I was tempted by the Star-Lord helmet that I don't know if it's actually out yet, that is confirmed, but I don't know. It's cool, but not like $80 cool. Like all these, I don't know if you guys have seen the Star Wars helmet Legos. The whole series of them. But if you see them ever like in store, they're like maybe a third of the size that I thought they were looking at them online. Which
do you want them to be the size of someone's actual head?
Yes,
or do you...
yes, Mike.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I'm just
for the amount of money. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking, because like obviously you're not going to put a Lego helmet on your head, are you?
I mean, you could. Have you watched Lego Masters? That show's incredible.
I'm sorry.
Watch it.
Let's take a step back. We're very far from comics. I do have a thing about this X-Mansion thing that I thought was going to be snarky, but now I need to know what Lego Masters is, please.
Lego Masters is basically Great British Bake Off, but Lego, where everybody's in teams of 2, and they get a challenge. Like you have to build a bridge, and it has to withstand X amount of weight, and whoever holds up the most weight wins. Or so they kind of alternate weeks between engineering challenges versus artistic challenges. So you have to make a sculpture with Lego. It is very fun. The judges are actual Lego designers from Lego. I imagine they went around Lego headquarters in Denmark and were just looked for like what are our prettiest 2 designers, because it's got to be a building full of nerds, and these 2 people look like they're right out of Hollywood.
Sure.
But anyway, they judge them, and so there's someone eliminated every week essentially, right. And so it's a competition thing like that, but it's like the time crunch and the, okay, bakers bake, except it's okay, builders build. Right. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, so I guess, okay, this is different than what I thought it was. I thought that Lego Masters was like a documentary series or something.
Mm-mm.
Didn't realize that it was a competition show. Nick in the chat is telling me that it's hosted by Will Arnett, which is great. I guess, like, I mean, he was Lego Batman, so that's cool. This sounds absurd, and I kind of feel like I need to watch it now. This sounds like very comforting, like television to just put on to turn your brain off and go, look, they're building it on Lego.
Very.
I like that.
I love the thing with competition shows like this where you can be like snarky about, oh my God, that's like a terrible design. You really think that's going to hold up? Whereas like, they're doing something you could never in 1,000 years do, but you get to be snarky about it. Right. But I don't know. You get your teams you start rooting for, but the nerding is intense.
It's my favorite part about those kind of reality shows is they make me say shit that I have no business saying.
Exactly.
Like I'll be sitting there watching somebody try to make a sword. I'm just like, if that's how you forge your canister Damascus, you were going to have D-lamps out your ass. Like, what does that mean? I barely know.
I think that Great British Bake Off is what gave me a lot of unearned confidence when it came to cooking very recently. And, it's because I see things like, oh, I'm going to have a soggy bottom. You know that she's going to have a soggy bottom with that. Like, it's very fun. Okay, so Lego Masters.
You just wanted to say soggy bottom.
I did. I just wanted a reason to say, listen, I'm not repeating some of the jokes that are in the chat right now that were far beyond things that are normally said on this type of show. So So anyways, back to the Legos that you posted in here. So we've got a very interesting X Mansion, which I think is great, except for, and then this is where I get to say my snarky bit, and I push up my glasses a little bit and say, actually the X Mansion doesn't exist anymore. They all live on Krakoa. So if they were going to be accurate, they would have us build like a quiet council or something. But an X Mansion would be cool, because I see that the listed figures in this picture that you've posted is 9 figures at least: Professor X, Magneto, Wolverine, Storm, Cyclops, Beast, Mystique, Sabretooth, and Emma Frost. Where's my boy Nightcrawler? That's all I'm saying. Where's my boy Cyclops? You know, I would swap Sabretooth for any other character, literally. So even Juggernaut, you know. But that's interesting. It's an interesting set, I'll say that. But 3,100 pieces, I don't even know what that equates out to in terms of like size and build shape, but that's pretty cool.
It equates out to a several $100 set.
Okay, well, I mean, let's say that, you know, your boy started saving up today, you know, just $1 a day. Maybe I'd get there in 2 years, but
the Lego Batmobile, I assume the one that you have, is 1,360 pieces.
Okay, that's a pretty big boy too, right? Like that's a big Lego thing. Danny,
so triple that.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, but that's the thing. There's verticality to an X Mansion, right? Like, I know the Harry Potter castle is a pretty big set as well, right? Like, you can get that. I don't know how many pieces that is, but yeah, I don't know. Either way, this sounds really cool. I like this idea. I'm surprised that there isn't a Jean Grey in this set, though.
Me too. That was one of the things that struck me with the minifigures. So my thinking in terms of why we're getting X Mansion versus Krakoa is that all of their Marvel sets have been based on movies.
Yeah.
Like they are going for the common denominator here.
It's because nobody gives a shit about Krakoa.
Yeah, that also.
Man, oh my God. Well, the thing, okay, well, it makes sense, right? They're based on the movies, but Danny in the chat makes a good point that if the basketball court does not open up to reveal a Quinjet, then there was no point in the set. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. In the 3,000 pieces, the other part of that is that means this is going to be an 18 plus set for sure. Like that, this is going to be a detailed build made for adult nerds with spare money. They're like just keeping these millennials hooked. They got us as kids and they just keep milking us. Which, you know what? Good for them. It brings me joy.
Yeah. I just looked it up, the Harry Potter castle. That's the only thing I can compare to, just because I know it's a big set. 6,000 pieces for that. That's a pretty big set.
That one's huge.
It's also almost $500. And quite honestly, I'd rather buy a new computer, like a new Mac Mini, than get a Harry Potter castle. But that's just me.
Speak for yourself, Mike. Jeez.
I'd rather slam my hand at a car door than buy a Harry Potter set. But that's just me.
Did you guys see the Batman animated series one for the Gotham City too? Another 3,000 plus piece set. It's the Gotham City skyline. So this is again rumors, just to be clear. But in the Art Deco style of the show, with the skyline over a background of like a red sky with black clouds and like a moon, police blimp, bat sign in the Batwing. And it's supposed to include Jokerland with the Ferris wheel, Gotham word brick built, and like they also mentioned in the description for the survey that people are taking that there's like panels that can be opened up, and the figures listed are Batman, Joker, Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, and Phantasm. That one sounds cool. That seems like it has potential to be a really cool display set, as in a pretty bookshelf piece, you know?
I mean, you are literally Luigi's Mansion style vacuuming money out of Danny's pockets right now by saying this. This is so cool. I'm not I'll be completely honest. I'm going to speak my truth here on the show. Never really watched Batman the animated series outside of the occasional clips, and you know, maybe I caught an episode or two. I have seen Mask of the Phantasm, fantastic movie. That said, the style of that series is amazing, and I 100% could see like owning something like this too, just because like you said, it would be a really cool display piece. Like if you had a high up shelf or something that you wanted to, you know, put this on, I think that would look really cool. Which kind of brings me to my question, unless you had more you wanted to go into for these other sets, Kate. But I did have a question about like displaying this kind of stuff. Like, how do you guys go about, you know, building and then putting these things somewhere where you can look at them?
For any of these big sets, there's a secondary market of people who make basically like plexiglass boxes so that they're easier to dust and shit. But you can also get these dusters on Amazon. They're not made for Lego, but they work really well for it, that are basically like really long paintbrushes, so that I don't know what you call them, the tassels of this duster kind of gets all in the crooks and crannies of the Legos. Because if
Mm,
you let the dust build up enough that you can't just dust it off, they are a massive pain in the ass to wash.
right. You have to like acid wash your Lego.
Yeah, it's not great. So right now I have all my sets on like a ledge that's built into my basement wall,
Nice.
but that's not very wide. And I have a set to build as my next build that is wider than that. So I'll have to figure out something else. So
This
we'll
is
see.
this is where you
This
become
is where
extremely
bookshelves come into play, I
right.
think.
Or you become extremely crafty into like building extenders onto these ledges or something. Like Kate,
Yeah.
you're gonna learn about like weight physics and wood types and stuff just so that you can display your Lego, right?
The other piece is I'm starting to get a problem of like Lego storage, where
Sure,
I've
sure.
like invested in some like craft storage boxes that have lots of little sorters things, because I want to start making like custom builds. I've been inspired by the show, and then you
Ooh.
can build. Well, first of all, you can build stuff without spending more money, but
But then you'd have to take
also
apart your other creations,
you
right?
do. It's true, yeah. Um,
That's okay.
it is. And there's also Rebrickable, which lets you like pay people for their PDF of their design for their custom creation. You plug in which sets you have, and it tells you whose Rebrickable designs you could build with the pieces you have from your sets,
Dude,
which is super handy.
uh that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
And they're usually really cheap, like $5 or something.
I mean, I I'm not surprised that there is a market of like a sub market beyond the Lego company, like, and I'm sure
Hmm.
that Lego doesn't care as long as you continue to buy Legos from them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so much of Lego is secondary market just because all sets retire in a certain amount of time. I mean, the average is
Right.
like 14 to 16 months, and then you can only get it on the secondary market. Sometimes things are around longer or shorter, but by and large, it's that, a little over a year window. A lot of people I see online on like the forums have like IKEA shelves up on their wall,
Uh-huh.
floating wall shelves
Right,
that
right.
then you can put sets up on, which I might go that route, but
Yeah, no, I think that there's like it's funny to see like the dedication to folks that like showing off their Lego and stuff, because like I I can only think of it from like a very like rudimentary setup of just like I have to buy bookshelf for this. I have to put thing on bookshelf. That is only place that things can live. When I know that there is more that you could do. Like you can create these almost like shelfless shelves and stuff that are
mhm.
like these floating shelves that kind of exist. And yeah, I love to see the way that people get creative, because like right now I've just got like a big Calyx bookshelf that's like all my comics, my
Mhm.
Hero Academia figures, and some occasion I have a handful of textbooks for some reason that I probably just need to like burn. But yeah, it's interesting to see like the way that people get creative. I live in an old house. I live in 100-year-old house, and we have lath and plaster walls, which means that putting holes in those walls is a
Yeah.
thing that I don't dare to try. But I hope that one day I could figure out a way to just put shelves like on some of the walls that are in my place to do that kind of stuff. But
I've seen a lot of people with the Kallax bookshelves for Lego
yeah,
display too. And then
yeah.
they put like the LED light strips at the top to kind of like light each little box. It looks super cool.
Mm. Yeah, that's
That's simply more effort than I'm willing to put in. Mine
well,
just sit on top of whatever surface is available.
see, Brian's speaking the real truth here. I think that's probably how a lot of people display their sets,
Yeah.
and their other comic book memorabilia, since we're gonna try to wrangle this back to comic books in some capacity. But yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I Paul in the chat is saying, fishing line from the ceiling, which I think is a really interesting idea.
They actually, like the Star Wars ships, have built-in handles designed for people to hang them like that.
Those of you at home cannot see my jaw literally dropping to the desk that I'm sitting at. That is the coolest thing
It's
I've
horrifying.
ever heard. Very, very, yeah. I look like I don't even know. I look like one of the aliens from Legion. Anyone remember that movie? Anyways, yeah, that's cool. I built in. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that they need to build an X-Men Quinjet, and I need to be able to hang it from the ceiling. That's what I'm
Yes.
hearing, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
to be clear, it's the model. So for Star Wars in particular, they tend to come out with two versions of like the Hallmark ships, like the Millennium Falcon. They'll have like the ones designed for kids. It's way cheaper, way less detailed, and much sturdier build, so you can swoop it around and play with it. And then they'll come out with like a much more detailed, much bigger and more expensive build that is meant to be like basically building a model, and is designed for older teens and adults, and those are the ones that have handles because they are way too fragile to play with, and they're explicitly to display.
Interesting.
And those have the things that people hang them with fishing line.
This is not a habit I need to get into at all, and yet I find this all to be extremely fascinating. But because I've seen this, and I walked through Target one time, and I saw the Batman mobile. The Batmobile from the latest Batman, and I saw there were two versions, and I was like, Kelly, if you get me one, give me the big one. And I was like a little kid, I was holding her hand, I was like, I want that one.
I want the big one.
I want the big one, not the little one. I was like literally fully extending my hand and everything. But I now understand the value of the smaller one, because if I had the smaller one, I could play with the smaller one.
Exactly.
Which is fun. Danny says you can buy both and practice on the little one.
I did actually go to Target earlier today and get Legos. There's a sale going right now.
What do you mean earlier today? You left the house before 1?
Yes, I did. I had to rush out. There's 20% off a bunch of sets right now.
I love this for you, Kate. I'm so happy.
So here's the thing. This is how I got so deep down the rabbit hole. Is when I'm working on the computer, that I have like problems with the nerves that control my eyes, right? The autonomic nerves. And when I'm on the computer all day, I really, really can't be on screens in the evenings or even just like read it. My eyes just won't focus. It's too blurry. So I needed to get into something that was screen free. And I had been gifted some Lego sets that I had like years ago that I hadn't put together. And so I tried that after first trying like art stuff, but it was just not going well with the hand arthritis to like draw and stuff like that. And plus, I'm really bad at it, like comically bad at it, to the point that I get frustrated. And then I was like, oh shit, this is amazing. And it's one of those things that's like, you put on an audiobook or a podcast and you just kind of get into the zone. It's very zen in its own little way. I've really enjoyed it.
No, that's awesome. I love that that's there for you, because like I feel like Lego, especially if people of like our age, has been around since forever, right? And it's been a thing that for a lot of us, probably consistent in some capacity in our lives, whether you're too old and someone gives you a Lego set to be like, I don't know what to get you, here you go. Or then you're old enough and you go, I'm buying these Legos for me. Or, you're little and you get them just as gifts. But I'm glad that you're able to like get back to that. I don't know if you've just been a consistent Lego head your whole life. That's what they call themselves, right? Lego heads?
I don't think so, but
okay. Yeah, they like brick heads. I think it's brick heads.
I had Legos as a kid, but I wasn't like super into it. I put basically the building was like the necessary part to get to the fun part, which was playing with them like dolls.
Okay.
Like the vehicles and the houses and the little I played with them as like doll sets basically. So I had some stuff, but not a lot. But for our millennial listeners out there, if you have Lego sitting at your parents' house, look up that set. Like I looked up my castle set that I had as a kid, and it is worth $400 now on eBay, because some people are crazy about collecting the old stuff.
Holy smokes.
So guess who's going to be selling that to get more Legos?
Hey, if you got any Bionicles kicking around back there, send them my way.
Dude, I was going to say, I know that I have Bionicles at my mom's house, and I know that there's a resurgence right now of people who want Bionicles. But Brian, if I find any, actually, you live closer to my mom than I do. So if you drive to her house and find any Bionicles, they're yours, man.
Yeah. All right. Do I have to tell her I'm coming, or can I?
No. Just show up. I'm sure she'd love that. There's a large man in your basement. Don't worry about it.
If any of you do want to get into this and have more limited means, because I'm a grad student, I don't make a ton of money. There are lots of strategies to make this hobby more affordable. And if you check out the main Lego subreddit on Reddit, obviously, there's all sorts of things that you can do to get into like sale tracking, but also like the cashback apps often are really good ways to pair with the sales to then get like a really good chunk offsets, and the VIP program lets you get like essentially cash back to spend on other Lego sets in the future and stuff like that. But there's ways to make it, and then like rebrickable, like building other things with the bricks you already have. There's ways to make it more affordable. There's also like swap sites for people who have sets that they built and they've displayed and now they're bored with them and they want some other set, and then it's like looking for this and here's what I have and stuff like that. So I've gotten some like used stuff off eBay that's not like collectible, it's just used, so it's cheaper.
No, that's cool.
Not that I haven't thrown like more money than I should at this, but it's been fun.
Well, I appreciate and also am very mad that you brought this X-Men set to my attention, and now I'm probably going to fall a little bit into this. Danny and I at one point were talking about building our Batmobiles together on a live stream or something. So I feel like this is a more this is more
a race.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that would be fun. But yeah, this is almost like a more of a kick in the pants for me to actually do that, because I got this very nice Batmobile set for my birthday, and I've kind of just been sitting on it because I really want to build it, but I know that if I build it, I want to build it in one go. And as much as I do have a little bit more room in my house, I can't just leave this on a table all day. I don't have like an extra table, so that could be really fun.
You got cats too.
And I got cats, and I don't know what they would do with Lego. I don't think they've, in my almost 10 years of having them, I don't know if they've ever experienced Lego.
So something to keep in mind, Mike, is that modern Legos come in multiple bags and they're numbered. So unlike when we were kids, so you could do like a bag, put that together, and then like that's a thing people commonly do to kind of space out their build to like make it last longer because of how expensive these freaking things are. So you could do like a bag per night, and one bag for like an adult set like that would probably take you less than an hour.
Interesting. Well, what you're saying is that we can make multiple pieces of content off of this one box that I got. No, that's a good idea. I did not know that they did that. I genuinely have not bought a set for Legos that was larger than like probably a single bag since I was ever. I don't think I've ever had it. Maybe once. But my nephew really into Legos for a minute. So I was helping him build stuff when I would see him in Michigan for a minute. But yeah, this is all very exciting. I guess, Brian, what's your experience with Lego? I guess we'll talk about that. Maybe we can wrap up here, lest we talk about Lego all day, because I probably have 1,000,001 more questions that I'm going to make Kate answer if we sit on here all day.
Yeah, I mean, I was a Lego kid growing up. I went for the Star Wars sets, so I had the episode 1, the submarine thing that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Jar Jar hop in.
Beautiful.
Most of the time, though, I was just kind of building my own shit.
Sure.
Mostly spaceships, because that's the kind of kid I was, /am. I remember I got really into like Lego. You're talking about the Master Builders thing. I got obsessed with making durable like Lego creations. So my whole goal was like building things out of Legos that I could throw down the stairs without them breaking.
That's such a boy thing.
That's so sick. That's so cool. Shut up, Kate. That's awesome. So what was your master creation then? Did you ever come up with something that could stably fall down your stairs without being like burst into a million pieces?
Oh yeah. No, it was basically like an escape pod almost.
Okay.
That was so overbuilt that it could survive almost anything.
And I'm assuming you would put like minifigs in it and stuff, and you know, send them on their various travels.
You gotta have a pilot,
right? Okay, that makes sense. But Kate, you're very much right. That is very much like a young like boy thing to do.
Yeah.
Yes, young boy.
Right. Just off camera is a pile of Legos of Brian's last few tries.
I was definitely like 14 or something.
Sure. Well, cool. I guess, my experience with Legos is like, I've got, maybe if it wasn't clear, I had Bionicles when I was growing up. I had like I didn't have any licensed stuff, but I did have like little aliens. There was like some space aliens figures that had like a lot of those like neon green flames that I thought looked really cool. And for some reason, my parents bought me a blacklight when I was like in elementary school, and so we would just have it on, and it's like all the neon colored stuff would look really cool under the black light. So we had it mounted on the wall in our living room in the basement. It's totally weird. And then we put all of the alien sets underneath the blacklight. And then at night we would turn that blacklight on and all the neon color stuff would light up, which was cool. And yeah, when I was younger, we had just like random sets that I think were from like the 80s that my mom just got at a garage sale. Not sets, but just like a box full of Legos. And I had a table that was like made out of plastic, but the top of the table was a big Lego base. So we would build like entire cities. My brother and I used to build huge random brick towers like that would go almost, as tall as we could get as little kids. And we'd stand up on chairs and get yelled at for building too tall. And then of course, inevitably we would get in a fight and one of us would go, I don't like this. And then just push it over.
Mike and Doug accidentally recreating the Tower of Babel with Legos.
Right. This is why my brother and I can't speak to each other anymore. Because he speaks French now, but no, that so. But this is really cool. I like the idea of being choosy about Legos and maybe getting like one particular set that I can just be like into, like the Batmobile or a 3,122 piece X mansion that my wife doesn't have to know about. She doesn't listen to the show, so she's never gonna hear about this.
I'm gonna text her right now,
Brian. But yeah, no, that's Kate. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I guess to wrap things up here, any last thoughts you guys have about, I guess, comic related Lego or just Lego in general?
Some of the leaks that weren't like explicitly comics, but are like pretty close, have to do with Legend of Zelda. Like the Zelda tree set, which is supposed to have the Breath of the Wild and I forget the older Zelda game, but like two versions of it, basically two builds. Okay. And then like Indiana Jones, which a lot of those have been confirmed now and like have official like pictures and stuff, and a bunch of new Star Wars sets, which look cool. I'm really hoping for the Star Wars one, they come out with the rumored Ewok Village. They made one years ago, but now because it's been retired so long and is so popular, it's like $700 some to get because it's, supply and demand.
Sure.
Since it's been retired for so long, I would love to have that. I want it. I want it so bad.
100 little Ewoks that you can just mysteriously place all around your house. Yeah. That's cool. Well, yeah, no, the Breath of the Wild. Here's the trick now. Kelly loves Zelda stuff. So if I say, oh, if you could get this Breath of the Wild, I'll get the X-Men one, and then we can build side by side, and that would be a reason to justify spending double the amount of money, I'm sure.
It's called parallel play.
Right. Okay. That's what we'll call it. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. Unless you had any final thoughts, Brian, I'll talk to my mom about Bionicles. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, apologies to anybody who came here looking for comics stuff.
Yeah, we're just trying to feed a new habit that you could all get into.
We're just having fun.
It's
next
comics related.
Next week's show, I promise, will be very super comics related because we're specifically talking about romance comics, which is part of the reason why I wanted to read Love Everlasting. The topic that I wrote down was, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. It's Valentine's Day, comics that'll break your heart. We're going to have a special guest on that episode, Zach McCrary from the Comics That We Love podcast. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited. You may have heard plugs for me talking about Zach's podcast, but he's a cool guy. It's going to be a lot of fun. His podcast is really fun, so I'm excited to talk about that with him. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Discord. You can check out the Goodreads Reading Challenge at goodreads.com. Just search for I Read Comic Books or check out the link in the show notes. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast to get access to a ton of backlog stuff, including the Best of 2022 episode that came out this past week, as well as the IRCB movie club that we're going to be dropping with Kev from the Austin Danger Pod. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. Zander has found the true meaning of life and will share it with you if you tell him a secret. I want to say thank you to Kate and Brian for being on this episode. Thank you to everyone hanging out with us live in the Discord. Thank you to the listener, if you got this far in the episode. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.